Hi, everyone. My name is Zach McDaniel. I'm a Student Success Advisor with the College of Arts and Letters, and welcome to Online Learning Strategies. This workshop is part of the Cal Student Success Workshop Series, and it's designed to go over some of the strategies that you can use to help you be successful learning in an online environment. So before we really dive into some of the strategies for online learning, I really wanted to create a framework for this workshop and kind of an overarching idea of how to approach learning as an online student. A lot of it is done on your own because you're not going to a physical classroom, and you may not have those common influences like your faculty or your peers to help keep you motivated or help keep you on track or to remind you when things are due. So I want to approach these online learning strategies from a space of self-regulation. And ultimately, there's this long definition right here, but what self-regulation is about is active learning. It is about you being an active participant in your own learning process. Learning is not something passive that just happens to you. Learning is something that you need to take a role in. And so what does that mean? That means that you are setting goals for yourself when you're learning. So you're asking yourself why you're involved in the learning process, and you're thinking about what you want to get out of it every time you enter into a learning situation, and that you're actively modifying yourself, whether it be your cognition, your thoughts, your motivations, your behavior, to make sure that what you're doing as you're learning is in line with what your goals are. So that if during the learning process you realize that you're doing something or you're thinking something, or you're taking notes in a way that's not going to ultimately help you achieve your goal of what you want to learn, then you adjust that to make sure that you are going to learn what you want during that experience. And so that's what self-regulation is. And it becomes very apparent during online learning that you're going to have to be responsible for yourself. Again, you're not going to have necessarily other people there to help make sure you get these things done that are checking in with you. And so you have to really be on top of your own self-regulation. And so that's something I just want you all of us to think about as we go through today's workshop. And there's the reference at the bottom for you to kind of see where I got this. It's always important to cite your sources. So Bradley and Boone did this whole data analysis of all these different studies about self-regulation and seeing what works as far as learning outcomes. And they wanted to say, okay, all these people have done this research. What are the actual learning strategies that are going to help, and what doesn't? And so they've done the summary for us. And so they looked at people that met their goals, that met their learning outcomes, and what strategies they used to achieve those. And the things they found were helpful, right here: time management, metacognition. Again, that's part of that self-regulation. That's thinking about how you're thinking and adjusting accordingly. Effort regulation, making sure that you're thinking about how much effort you're putting in and you're adjusting it appropriately. And critical thinking, asking yourself questions as you're learning and not just being passive about your learning. And kind of goes back to that self-regulation. And the things that they strategies that they saw people incorporate that didn't necessarily help them achieve their learning goals were rehearsal, elaboration, and organization. So rehearsal is where you repeat something over and over again. You can reread a sentence in a chapter multiple times, but if you're not actively engaging with the material, you're not asking yourself, am I understanding what I'm learning? And you're just reading it over and over again, you're not necessarily going to achieve your learning goal. Same with elaboration. If you can just recite facts about something. If I give you a topic and you can just tell me about it, but you don't really understand it, or you can't make connections with the material between different topics, then you're not necessarily going to achieve your learning goals. And with organization, that's something I think a lot of us like to do. We like to buy all these notebooks, all these pens, and get really organized and say, I'm going to learn and this is how I'm going to do it. I'm setting myself up. But just because you buy the right materials and create the right space for yourself doesn't mean that you're actually going to achieve your learning if you're not actively participating in that learning process. And so those are just some things to consider as you're figuring out what strategies you want to use as an online learner. And a final point here, peer learning is key. It's really helpful to communicate with your peers, with other people that are learning the same thing as you are. Oftentimes, you'll find that people bring different perspectives to learning, and people will see things that you may not have considered or ask different questions that you hadn't thought of. Now, obviously, that can be harder in a virtual environment where you're not in a physical classroom with other people, and so it's important to figure out how you can make that peer learning happen as an online student. So the first strategy I want to talk about is time management. It's so important when it comes to being successful as a student, physical or online. It never hurts to have good time management skills. And so I want to encourage you to kind of think about what time management skills you currently use, how those are working for you, and what possibly you could do to adjust or improve that skill set, to build on it. So here's some ideas. So first of all, online learning can be very self-pacing and requires you to recreate structure. Some classes will have regular meeting times, others will be go at your own pace. And if you don't have that structure already set for you, it's going to be very important for you to create it yourself. If you don't have someone telling you when assignments are due, it's very easy to put them off for other things that seem to be more immediately pertinent. And then all of a sudden you get towards the end of the semester and you're really behind. You have all these things due that you just have been putting off. So it's really important that you create structure for yourself. And to do that, I encourage you to build a schedule for yourself. Even though you're going to class virtually, it's best if you think about it as though you're going to class regularly. Just because you can't go to a physical location doesn't mean you can't have a set time where you go to class and you treat it like you're still in school. So one of the things we often tell students is that for every hour you're in class, you should be spending 2 to 3 hours outside of class doing reading, homework, essays, studying. So as you create a schedule for yourself, block in those times that you have class and make sure you're doing that regularly. So if you say, I have a language class for 1 hour on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, pick a time, say 9 a.m. So 9 a.m. Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, you are going to class, even virtually. And then for that 1 hour, give yourself 2 to 3 hours, build those into your schedule as well. Give yourself that study time. The more you can create a regular scheduled environment for yourself, the easier it is for you to stay on top of things. And make sure you stick with it. Having one schedule 1 week and then changing it up the next week just because you feel like it is going to make things a lot more complicated, and it's going to be a lot harder to stick to a schedule because then it doesn't become a habit. It just becomes something you have to do that week. So try to create a schedule for yourself and really stick to it. Now, as you're building that schedule, I encourage you to create smaller chunks of study time. Doing 3 hours of straight reading for your history class or your Spanish class can seem really daunting and overwhelming, and it all of a sudden becomes a lot more interesting just to put that off and do something that's not so daunting. However, if you take that 3-hour study session and you break it up into 6 30-minute chunks, it all of a sudden becomes a lot easier. It's much easier to do something for 30 minutes than it is for 3 hours. So do 30 minutes of studying on one subject, then maybe switch it up, do 30 minutes for something else, then take a break, work out, listen to music, do something that helps relax your mind, and then come back to it. So make sure as you're building out your schedule, you're breaking up those larger study sessions into smaller chunks. That'll make it much more manageable. Again, I mentioned earlier, but having a goal is really helpful for your learning and for that self-regulation, and make sure you stay on track. And as you're reading through maybe a large chapter book, or you're working through some chapters in a textbook, create a goal for yourself of what you want to get out of that. Ask yourself, okay, what are the questions I want answered by the end of this reading? Or if you're in a math class, what are the formulas I want to know by the end of this study session? And then as you're going through that study session, ask yourself, is what I'm doing right now working towards that goal I set for myself, or am I getting distracted, or am I on another tangent? And then you can see if you're working towards your goal, great. Or if not, you may have to do some self-regulation to figure out how you can get back towards working towards that goal. Or maybe you need to create a new goal for yourself, and that's fine. But always having something you're working towards will really help you evaluate if you're actively learning and actively working towards your learning goals. I encourage you to create check-in points for yourself. So during those study sessions, identify, okay, every half an hour I'm going to check in and make sure I'm working towards my goal. During a regular week, at the end of the day, create a check-in time for yourself and say, is what I did today helping me towards my ultimate learning goals? Figure out when you want to do those checkpoints, whether it's every couple hours, every evening, at the end of the week. You can do all of those. And those will help you get designated times within that schedule to make sure what you're doing is working towards your goals you set for yourself. So I like to finish this up by pointing out just some apps that you can use to help you manage all the things you've got on your plate. A lot of people like to use maybe like a Google Calendar or whatever the Apple version of that is, and that's totally fine. You can plug in times for your classes and for your homework and for your studying, and that'll be really helpful to you. And you can set reminders so that your phone or computer notifies you when it's time to do things. Or maybe you like specific apps. And so iStudies and My Homework are just two of the many out there that are specifically designated for students like yourselves that are trying to figure out how to get all your assignments done. So those are just some options for you to take advantage of. All right, the next strategy is about removing distractions. When we're not in lockdown, I can imagine you have a lot more opportunities of places to study and go to remove distractions. However, when you're stuck at home, you may not have the opportunity to just get up and leave to get rid of distractions. And so it's important to consider how you can help minimize distractions, whatever your current learning environment looks like. I encourage everyone to find just a quiet space that you can designate specifically for studying, even if it's just a small corner, a small desk, a seat at your dining table. Identify that as your quiet study space. And then be sure that you're not using it for other purposes as well, if you can manage that. So I don't encourage you to study on your bed, because you also associate your bed with sleeping and with relaxing. And so it can be hard to make that distinction between this is a space for study and this is a space for relaxing. Pick a space that you can specifically designate as a place for studying. If you are living with other people, with family, with roommates, with partners, with kids, communicate your needs to them and what your schedule is. Let them know that you're a student right now, and while you do have other responsibilities, you need to make sure you can prioritize your studies, and let them know. Most likely, the people you're with will also have specific things that they need to get done as well. And so by communicating your specific time needs, your schedule needs, you can work together to make sure that you're supporting each other with what you need. That if you need your quiet time and they need theirs, you can all figure out how that you can all schedule that together. I think music can also be a great thing for the environment if that works for you. Some people study great With music, it creates some white noise in the background, but it's important not only to not pick music that's going to be a distraction, but also music may not relax you. And so if not, don't worry about it, but that's something you can evaluate on your own. Again, I encourage you to identify the goal you're working towards as part of helping deal with distractions. If you realize that something has taken you off course, then you can identify it as a distraction and readjust to make sure you're, again, working towards whatever learning goal you've set for yourself. Some great apps or digital tools you can use: Flipped, Cold Turkey, Self-Control. These tend to involve blocking your phone and the internet from your availability. So that might mean that it prevents you from getting on your phone for a little while, or it blocks certain websites. If you find that those things are a distraction from your learning, these might be great tools for you to incorporate to help you make sure that they don't become a distraction. Something to consider. All right, active learning. I talked about this earlier as part of self-regulation, and I kind of want to dive a little more into what it actually entails, or how to better take advantage of it. So some of the things you can do to really make sure you're active learning: one, you can try to speak during class. I know it can be hard during Zoom classes, and it can be awkward, especially to figure out who's doing what. But there are options to raise your hand, and often professors will ask questions. And so if you force yourself to speak up during class, to answer a question, or to even ask a question that you found during your reading or your studying, that involves you in the learning process. It makes sure that you're not just sitting there passively listening, and then you get to the end of the lesson and you realize you didn't take in anything from that day's class. So try to find ways to engage during class. That's a great way to do active learning. Another way is to ask yourself questions during your learning and during your reading. As you're going through a chapter, ask yourself, do I understand the point of this? Could I summarize this in a sentence? Do I see any connections between what I'm learning now and what I've learned previously? Do I have any questions about what I'm reading or learning now that I want to ask during class? Those are great ways to better engage with the learning that you're doing, and to make sure that you're staying active with your learning. I encourage participation in discussion boards on Blackboard or Canvas, whatever y'all are using. I know those aren't necessarily the most fun things, but because you're in a virtual environment and you don't always have the opportunity to do small group work during classes, Blackboard discussions can be a great way to engage in conversation about the material. Again, that's that peer learning element that's really important to achieving your learning goals. So really take advantage when your professors give you those opportunities to do discussion boards. Use it as an opportunity to engage your peers in the class, because it might be one of the only opportunities you have. And then I encourage you to practice testing yourself or teaching the material. Again, one way to make sure you're not just passively taking in information and that you're not really understanding it is to test yourself. Do a practice quiz, create your own practice quiz, or practice teaching the material to someone else. One fun activity I like to encourage people to do is to try to teach something to someone else as if they were a 5-year-old. So if you can teach someone math, or you can teach someone language, or you can teach someone history, and summarize it up so that a 5-year-old would understand, you probably have a really good grasp on it. And so those are just some of many strategies that you can take advantage of the active learning. All right, I kind of mentioned it a little bit before, but staying connected to others is really important to your online success. I know it can feel like you're doing this alone, and physically it might be that way. However, thanks to the advent of modern technology, there are many ways to still stay connected with other people. I encourage you to create study groups for your work outside of class. Seems like with Zoom and or group phone calls, you can still have some sort of group study sessions, which can really help you stay motivated. Um, as I said, stay engaged in classroom discussions, either during class or during those Blackboard, Canvas discussions. You can even use collaborations in Canvas and Blackboard to do group work, or some of these other apps down at the bottom. I know Miro is one that creates like a virtual whiteboard so that multiple people from different computers can use that at the same time. And so that's an opportunity for you to be engaged live with other people. Same with Google Suite, Slack, GroupMe. All those can really be opportunities to work with other people. And then remember that there's also still opportunities going on for you to stay connected to the SDSU community outside of class, whether that's the cultural centers, Cal Council. Think about opportunities to get involved with your peers. That can really help balance out the pressures of the academics if you have other fun things you're doing on campus with your peers, even virtually. I also encourage you to seek out support if needed. This is a rough time for a lot of people, and while it seems like things might be getting better, the timeline is still up in the air. And I know a lot of people have struggled during this time, whether it's emotionally, mentally, financially. And so I want to make sure that you are getting the support you need. And you might have already heard that many, many times before, and that's okay. That's great. I'm going to say it again because it is so important to make sure you are taking care of yourself so that your own physical and mental and emotional health don't become distractions that take away from you achieving your learning goals. Remember, part of that self-regulation is actively reflecting on yourself and your own situation and seeing if what you're doing is either being helpful or a hindrance towards your learning. So I encourage you, A, to communicate with your professors about your needs early and often. Don't wait. Professors know that students are going to have stuff come up, especially now. And so I know it can be kind of awkward to create that first interaction if it's a new professor you haven't had before. I think office hours are a great opportunity for you to reach out to a professor and let them know if you're struggling in a class. But they can also be an opportunity for you to talk to a professor if you have things outside of the class that are affecting your ability to do well. But make sure you don't put that off. Do it sooner than later, because you might get towards the end of the semester and all of a sudden you're asking the professor for help and they say, I wish you would come sooner. We would have been able to work on this, but at this point, there's nothing I can do. So again, make sure you let your professors know if you need support. You don't have to let them know everything that's going on in your life. You can be vague about some things. That's your privacy. But if you want to be successful in their class, sometimes you might have to let them know that something's going on so that they know they need to support you. I encourage you to find a friend in class to get missing info from. Professors may not put everything online, or there may be things they mention during class that is not part of the regular reading. Oftentimes those things can come up on quizzes or testing. So it's really helpful if you've got a study buddy in all of your classes that you can ask about, what happened during class if you missed a session for any number of reasons. I want to make sure that you know about the ECRT, the Economic Crisis Response Team. So they're this wonderful kind of group that SDSU has created that is really helpful, especially now during the pandemic, to make sure students are getting the support we need. To recognize that there's a lot of resources available on campus that you may not have at home, that you intended to take advantage of at SDSU and you can't now because of your current learning situation. They help with technology checkout, food and housing insecurity, and all sorts of other things So if there are outside factors that you can't control that are affecting your ability to do well as an online student, check in with the ECRT and see if maybe there's resources there that they can help you out with. If you have software needs, you can't use the school computer labs. I know SDSU is working to make sure students have access to the software they need. So check in with the library or this virtual academic help page, which talks about all the different resources that are available to students during this pandemic. And finally, I'd like to just do a little self-promotion and talk about Cal Advising and the Cal Student Success Center. So myself, along with Michelle Lanou, are your two Cal Student Success Advisors, and we are also available to help you if you need any guidance on grade issues or just academic support or academic options. We are available to you. And you can find us through caladvising@sdsu.edu. That is our general email, and we usually get back to you within 24 hours. So just let us know if you would like some support and you'd like to talk to someone through Zoom face-to-face, because we do a lot of our advising that way now. So we're happy to help and be a resource for you. Other virtual campus resources that are available to you. It's not just the Cal Student Success Center. Make sure you're taking advantage of the library, even though it may not be physically open. They do have 24/7 virtual support. And so that is definitely something to take advantage of, especially if you're working on research papers. We also have the Math and Stats Learning Center that do have Zoom tutors. A lot of students, whether you're Cal or you're not Cal, struggle with math. And so I encourage you to take advantage of the resources they provide there. You have to do math as part of one of your GEs. And so don't keep putting it off and just expecting you'll have to take it one day. Face it now, get the support you need, and get it done. And finally, we have the Writing Center. So they do have real-time appointments and feedback. If you're working on an essay and you need to figure out how to make it stronger or how to make your points more clear, or you're trying to figure out where to take it, or you're not sure how to even create a certain type of essay or a paper, the Writing Center can help you. I also know they've recently announced they're having a virtual front desk on certain days, and so that's something to check out as well. And all of these can be found on SDSU's website with their information. And again, I kind of have talked about this, but I think it's really important that you make sure you're taking care of your health, especially now. I mean, this is a health-related crisis that we're dealing with, and so COVID-19 is not the only thing that can affect you. There's also other physical and emotional challenges that can affect your well-being. Some of the resources available to you at SDSU, we have counseling and psych services, where we have resources, we have support groups, we have therapists available to students. And so if that's something you'd like to take advantage of, I encourage you to check them out. And we also have student health services. They're still open. They are doing COVID-19 testing. So if that's something that's an immediate concern, and if you're in the local area, I encourage you to take advantage of that as well. All right, and with that, that's what I have here today as part of this workshop. Thank you for checking in with us. Again, my name is Zach McDaniel. I'm one of the Cal Student Success Advisors, part of your Cal Student Success Center. I'm always happy to support you, whether you're a Cal major student or you're just taking Cal courses as part of a different major. We're always happy to help you achieve your learning goals. So if you ever want to talk, this is my email. You can also find me through EAB. I do have appointments available. And you can email our center at caladvising@sdsu.edu if you'd like to check in and have general questions, and we'll get back to you within 24 hours.